top of the hour. We're doing pretty good for timing. This is a variety show. Every single presentation has been so different, but so interesting. And this is our third one we're about to dive into, and then we've got 3 more after that. So we're about halfway. I like to just do these days, open it up to the community. We are celebrating the equinox. It's almost spring. Tomorrow at 3 p.m. exactly.
I'll be jumping.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, so you're going to meet a variety of people from the community who are sharing their stories, their knowledge, their expertise. And Ramona Remesat is our next presenter. She's a herbalist. And after suffering from uncomfortable gut symptoms for several years, Ramona finally received a diagnosis of SIBO. Have you heard that term before? SIBO, S-I-B-O, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Yeah. And immediately dove into learning all she could about this condition. Maybe you've done that too. You become the expert after getting a diagnosis and doctors aren't helping. You're like, okay, I guess I got to take this on. We should all be taking it on. Some of us just go very far,
crazy
with our learning. So her thirst for knowledge and fierce determination to uncover the underlying cause of her condition led to her become a SIBO educator and advocate, and returned to school to study at Wild Rose Herbal Medicine. And today, while working through her Master Herbalist study, she helps those suffering from unresolved GI issues, SIBO and IBS, by sharing resources, research, and ways to advocate for themselves and their healthcare practitioners. So this will be a story of inspiration, right? And some insight, whether you have GI issues of some sort or another or not. We're all dealing with something, a story of empowerment and insight. So thank you so much, Ramona.
Thank you, Malcolm.
Yeah, right on. We got about 45 minutes. Let's dive right in.
Let's go. All right. It's called My Story of Resilience and Hope, because resilience and hope are kind of what got me through this roller coaster 7-year journey that we're going to go on in about half an hour. Just by a quick show of hands, how many people here are actually dealing with some kind of stomach, gut, GI stuff? Okay. And how many of you have actually gotten a diagnosis that you're satisfied with? Okay, interesting. Before I get going, I just have to say that this is completely for educational purposes only. Okay, don't take because I said something and go run away and do it. Please talk to your doctor or your healthcare practitioner. Okay, so where does my story begin? Well, it sort of begins almost exactly 5 years ago on this day. Couple of days past this day, my family and I were spending our lovely March break here in Barbados, enjoying a lovely family holiday. However, if we backtrack 5 days, I was in the hospital. So I had ended up in ER, and it's because I woke up in the middle of the night and I was having some abdominal pain. It kind of kept growing through the morning time. Flash forward by about 10 p.m. that night, and I was being admitted. And so the diagnosis was diverticulitis. That's a mouthful. And if you don't know what that means, your colon should be like a garden hose, okay? In some people, there's little pouches that stick out, and that's diverticulosis. When that becomes infected, that's diverticulitis, and it can become quite serious. So I was admitted, I was put on IV antibiotics. I got to spend a lovely 3-day in the Casa del Rocky View. And although was panicking, because I'm like, I got to get on vacation, people, I was excited because I thought, aha, maybe this is finally going to give me some answers as to why I had been suffering extreme bloating to the point where I looked pregnant after I would eat. It would be extremely distended, my abdomen. It was rock hard. It was painful. I was experiencing alternating patterns in my bowel habits. So yeah, I thought, okay, good. This is probably going to explain all that. We can get on a road to fixing this and I'll be on my way. Previous to that, because I did sort of put 2 and 2 together that it was related to something I was eating, I went to see my lovely naturopath who's here, Dr. Tony, and I did some food intolerance testing and, you know, took out this, took out that, but nothing was really helping me. So the doc came in, the GI expert, the gastroenterologist on my discharge. And I said, okay, so is this going to explain why I've been having the bloating? He's like, no, it's just, you just need to go home, finish your antibiotics. Oh, and by the way, have a follow-up colonoscopy within 3 months and off you go. So, okay, alrighty then. So there I was still at home going, what in the heck is going on? What is causing me to have this flat-ish stomach in the morning within 90 minutes of eating? And as you can see here, I'm wearing pajamas. I couldn't wear normal clothes for about 2-3 years because of this. It was that pain, like the idea of having like a regular waistband, it was like, that's not happening. So it's kind of good COVID happened in the middle of that because there was a lot of track pant wearing going on during that time. So put my detective hat on and I'm like, we are going to solve this. And I laugh when I see this picture with the, the board in the background with like, because that's almost what I had. I didn't have it on a wall, but I have a file that's now about this thick of stuff from everything that I'd collected and researched and whatnot. So I was back to see Dr. Tony and I'm like, help. Because that's literally what I felt like every single day. Bloating, pain, rinse, repeat. And I laughed when I saw this online because I was like, I really need somebody to make this into a t-shirt for me. But who can relate here? Anybody have that kind of, yeah, right? So yeah, that's what it was feeling like. So she took one look at me when I explained my symptoms and she said, I think you have SIBO. And I was like, what in the hell is that? Because I'd never heard of it. As Malcolm explained earlier, it stands for small intestine bacterial overgrowth. And that's basically what it sounds like. You have too much bacteria where it shouldn't be, which is the small bowel. We need lots of bacteria in the colon, do its thing, but the small intestines should be fairly sterile. So it should not be there. So she sent me home with my handy dandy little SIBO test kit. And there's all this stuff. I had it all laid out and made all my little labels. And there I am about to drink my nice little lactulose sugar solution before the test. And then about a week later, positive for SIBO. So here we go, folks. The journey is getting going in earnest. Now, during that time, I wanted to cover all my bases. So I also talked to my GP and he's like, okay, yeah, you've got this bloating, whatever, we can test you for H. pylori, Helicobacter pylori, which is a common infection that can infect the stomach. It can lead to ulcerative diseases. That came back negative. So of course, now that every test had come back negative, all that they're left with is, well, then you have IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. However, what he didn't know is that research now shows that about 70% of IBS is actually SIBO. And so I explained to him that I had gone to see a naturopath. I had had a SIBO test. It was positive. We had come up with a plan of action. I went in armed with I'm like, here, this is the study and here's it all highlighted. And these are the meds I need you to prescribe for me. And I made sure I spoke nicely in his lingo. And he said, honestly, I really don't know much about this, but I'm willing to support you. I was so lucky. So he wrote me my scripts that I needed and told me, whatever I needed from him, he would be there. Others are not so lucky. Take a look at this. Okay, so I have been in some SIBO groups, okay? So I asked one day, I said, what's the craziest thing a doctor's ever told you when you explained your symptoms? So look at this. Oh, you're just have poor posture. You need to do some sit-ups and go to physical therapy. Oh, SIBO was a thing in the 80s, but it's not a thing anymore. Obviously, he hasn't looked at any literature in the last 10 years. I waited 4 months to see a specialist, only to be told it's IBS, probably because I have kids and I'm stressed. Here's an antidepressant. Stop reading these things online and go home and have sex with your husband. I almost fell off my chair when I read that one. Of course, the old perimenopause hormones, you're a woman, it's got to be that. Or maybe you're just fat. At the Mayo Clinic. Yeah. And this was from the group that I was in. So frustrated. What a hole. Just returned from the doctor and getting my positive test. He told me, one, there are theories of what causes SIBO, but no one has an actual answer. Wrong. The only thing that works is antibiotics and only for 50% of the people. Wrong. there's nothing else I can do. Don't go to a nutritionist, don't change your diet. You could try this diet, but nobody can stick with it. Wrong. So this is the crap that people are dealing with. And no wonder there's so much frustration. No wonder I was like, yeah. So this is the whole thing, right? And this is millions of people, because IBS affects 10% of the worldwide population. Considering 70% of that is SIBO, those are big, big numbers, okay? So they've got the bloating, the distension, abdominal pain, constipation, diarrhea, all that stuff. Away you go, get your expensive tests done. We're lucky here in Canada it's covered, but in the US they're paying out for that, right? Now you're told you have IBS. That's probably taken people about 4 years just to get to that point. And then on top of that, most of them are not getting the help that they need, as you saw. So now they're still running around practitioner to practitioner trying to get some sort of help. Okay, and this is going on all over the place. So for me, like I said, I was lucky. I had Dr. Tony, I had my MD all on board. I had asked for a prescription for rifaximin, which is the pharmaceutical that is given to treat SIBO. And the nice part about it is it stays in the small intestine, so it doesn't mess up all your good bacteria in your colon. And then also herbal antimicrobials. You don't have to do both. I wanted to hit this sucker and I wanted to hit it hard. So I opted for that. So with the antimicrobials, we did 2 weeks of certain herbs, then 2 weeks of different ones, and we rotated back and forth. And that was just a post that I found that I was sort of documenting this. And I said I felt like a junkie because I was just taking all these pills and, you know, still having some symptoms. But, you know, it's the way it was, right? I didn't want to sugarcoat anything. I wanted to document what was happening. After all that, here we are. Still feeling like that crocodile. Actually, it's an alligator, sorry. Bloating, feeling awful, lots of burning. As I was going into treatment, I would have this burning around my belly button. It was really tender, really fatigued. Brain fog, oh my God, like I felt like a zombie. I remember I sat down one day at this lovely computer and I was like, I don't know how to turn this on. It scared the crap out of me. It was bad. So here we go, back to the drawing board. We got to get to what's causing SIBO, because the thing with SIBO is it is not a standalone condition. It is always caused by something else. If you don't figure out the something else, people, even if you have treatment, they continue to relapse and relapse and relapse. So now we're in 2019, more tests. So I tested for mold because that can be a big picture for some people. I also tested my home, thankfully it's clear. If any of you are dealing with mold and you want to know about testing your home, come talk to me, because the test you should do is an ERMI test. Previously, I had done chelation therapy for heavy metals, so kind of had already dealt with that. But both Dr. Tony and I were like, Lyme, right? And she's like, yeah. So I'd had 2 tests for Lyme previously that were both negative, but the testing is notoriously bad. Right now, there's pretty much only 2 labs that are good. So there's one in the States and one in Germany. So we used Armin Lab. Got that test back. These are all the infections that I tested positive for, because when a tick bites you, it doesn't just give you Borrelia, which is the bacteria that causes Lyme disease. It can infect you with lots of other what are called tick-borne infections. Okay, so that was step 1. Now we knew what I was infected with. Before we did anything about it, though, we did follow-up tests to see, well, what is actually active or what's dormant. There's no point going in with guns blazing if these things are sleeping. So we did that follow-up test. Luckily, most of everything was kind of calmed down. There was a few things that were a little bit up. So we opted to do some immune modulating therapies. So this is me having IV ozone therapy. Again, just to kind of, you know, have the immune system at the ready, but not overstimulated. Around this time, the IBS SMART test became available in Canada. And this is a brilliant discovery. It's a blood test that will detect 2 specific antibodies in the blood. And so the way it works is it's looking for evidence of a food poisoning event. So if you had food poisoning, in most cases, your body clears that toxin and off you go. But in about 12% of the population, what ends up happening is, even though the toxin is gone, that toxin looks like a protein in the nerves of your gut. And so your body says, uh-oh, foreign invader, it starts to produce antibodies. And that the antibodies are anti-vinculin. That's what this test looks for. So those antibodies start getting cranked out. They start attacking the nerve cells in the gut that control motility. And what I mean by motility is every about 90 minutes, you have a little sweeping wave that goes through your small intestine as long as there's no food in there. And it sweeps everything downwards towards the colon. They call it the housekeeper wave or the house cleaning wave. When that is not working properly, stuff sits, it stagnates. There's bacteria, it starts to grow. You eat food, the bacteria eats your food, it ferments your food, it creates gas, and that's what occurs with, or that's what causes all that bloating. So it sets up that ripe environment for SIBO to take hold when your motility is impaired. So I did the test, yay. Okay, it's SIBO. Like I said, this is the whole cascade that happens, how that occurs. And it's technically called post-infectious IBS. And that's what my underlying cause was. So that was good information because once you know, then you can get after it. So around the same time, I was really, involved in this whole thing. So I was seeing the benefits of herbs. I decided to go back to school with Wild Rose College to take to study herbal medicine. And I really felt like I was becoming this full-time gut investigator. My family laughed because I often have headphones on, or every time I was in my car, I was listening to podcasts at home. I had my headphones on, I'm doing chores around the house, I'm listening. I was staying up late in the night listening to master classes with researchers and doctors and experts and reading studies and just totally immersed myself into it. And I started to share what I learned with others through podcasts. I was like, everybody, who do you know? Whose podcast can I speak on? Whose podcast? And, speaking and doing other live gigs and sharing my journey on social media and just connecting with a lot of other people that were kind of in the same boat with, gut or stomach problems. So now that we knew the underlying cause, okay, let's get at it now. Whole new plan of attack. We're going to change up some stuff. So let's go. One of the things I did was add something called a biofilm buster, a biofilm disruptor, because bacteria are smart. They don't want to get eradicated, so they seal themselves off in these lovely little biofilms. So when you give yourself a biofilm disruptor, it sort of takes their shields away. So as you're using the antimicrobials, as you're using pharmaceutical antibiotics, it has a better chance of getting at the bacteria. At this time, I also added a second, what's the word, antibiotic, metronidazole, because when I took rifaximin, that kills off the hydrogen producing bugs, but I also had methane show up on my breath test. So I needed something to go after the methane producers. So that was what the metronidazole was going to do. And I also got to add this. I should have brought some as a sample. You guys want samples today? This is affectionately known as the tincture of death. It is the worst thing I've ever tasted in my life, and I'm not a picky eater, but I choked it down, and that was a multi-herb, again, antimicrobial. And the key thing, though, was we added a prokinetic. So that is a motility drug. So remember I said the nerves weren't working properly and my motility was slow and it wasn't working. So this drug keeps that housekeeping wave moving. So the drug that I took was prucalopride. And also important step is meal spacing. Because like I said, that housekeeping wave only kicks in when you're fasting. So I eat 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, dinner. I try to go 4 to 5 hours between meal, nothing with calories in between, including beverages. So if you're sipping coffee all day and you've got your cream and sugar in there, you're not, giving your migrating motor complex a chance to sweep things out. And then I fast from dinner to breakfast. So that way, every time migrating motor complex wants to sweep, it has an opportunity to do that. Laugh at this picture of the kid's face. So after doing all that, hallelujah, finally got a clear SIBO breath test. Okay, SIBO is technically eradicated, but we don't want it to come back, right? So now we move into dietary stuff to help prevent relapse. So there's a multitude of different diets that people do to treat SIBO, but I decided to do the SIBO biphasic diet. And then I sort of transitioned into what's called the low FODMAP diet for several months. And it's very low carb, pretty much no carb at the beginning. So I just dropped weight like right at the beginning. I mean, I didn't really have weight to lose. Like it scared me how fast it was just kind of coming off. But the worst part was the emotional aspect, right? We all know food is love, food is social. And so it was pretty much impossible to eat out without, peppering the poor waiter or waitress with like 20 questions, like what's in this, what's in that, can I, so I was just like, forget it. And then, trying to be around people who could eat, drink, not just whatever they wanted, but whenever they wanted, however much of certain things they wanted, like it was a real difficult thing. So I just kind of became a hermit, didn't go out, didn't do anything, and just sort of like insulated myself. And it does, I knew I had to expand my diet because restriction is not good nutritionally wise. So, as I'm trying to expand my diet, it was very difficult because I had developed legitimate food fear. I did not want to go back where I was, right? So I knew the foods that were safe and I didn't want to go outside of that. And I knew I had to, so I actually had to get some help from a therapist because I had developed some disordered eating around this whole thing. All right, after months of treatment, up and down, did I feel better? Guesses? You know the story. No, I was pretty much at the lowest point I was ever at. At this point, I'm like, I had spent all this money. I'm like, oh my God, I'm just this huge drain on our family finances. I basically felt traumatized, like every time I had to put food in my mouth, because I'm like, what's it going to be? Is it, am I going to have a flare? Is it going to be okay? Like, basically felt nobody really got it because I looked okay. Right. And so people are all like coming up to me. They're like, oh, you look great. I'm like, yeah, I'd lost weight. I didn't really need to lose weight. In fact, I looked like a skeleton, but they're all like, yeah, great. And it was so bad. I had some thoughts, why am I here? Should I be here? So anyway, luckily I am here, saved by my kitty. Yay for Mimi. But I was really at my wit's end. So I just remember this day, I was so frustrated. I'm like, I grabbed this huge piece of paper that you can see here. And I'm like, I'm mapping it all out. I got to see this thing from a bird's eye view. So I just put everything on there. I was like, all the causes of SIBO, all my symptoms, what have I been diagnosed with? What meds and supplements am I taking? What are all the tests I did? I had like both sides of that paper and it's like this, we're covered. And I just mapped it all out. And I'm like, okay. And I kind of had a thing and I took a look at everything and I sort of came up with where I needed to go from there. So again, here we go. Again, a new era of the microbiome restoration, I call it. Oops, I went the wrong way. All right, so this is where I really feel like divine intervention stepped in because I think I did say one day, like, God, like, enough, like, help. So I was again on a podcast and I don't even remember how I got on this podcast or even what podcast it was, to be honest, but the speaker was Dr. Kasha Kynes, who's a functional nutritionist. And she was sharing this book, her book, The Epstein-Barr Virus Solution. Okay, so I'm listening to this and I'm like, because when I mapped that whole thing out, one thing that popped out was Epstein-Barr. In all my tests of what was active, what was dormant, Epstein-Barr was kind of at the top of being, some stuff. So I went and I got this book. I didn't read this book. I consumed this book. I don't know if you can see, like, it's like so, I have like highlights, everything. So I consumed this book and then I'm like, I need to work with this woman. And so we were chatting back and forth. She's like, we can work for 2 months together every week, 2 hours, like it was in depth. And I'm like, okay. And then she's like, and this is how much it is. I'm like, okay. All right, I'll get back to you. So I had a chat with the hubby. And I was scared. I'm like, what if we spend all this money and this doesn't work? Right. But I was at my wit's end, like I said, and where else could I go from there? So I felt, you know what? The universe showed me this woman for a reason. So I dove in. And we had just started working together and it was Boxing Day 2019. And guess where I ended up again? Emergency. This time from a UTI. This was before my herbal really knowledge. I would have never gone on antibiotics knowing what I know now. But anyway, so I did that. Not even 2 weeks later, I wake up one day and my throat's on fire like daggers. Strep throat. Bad strep throat, back on the antibiotics again. As you can imagine, the back-to-back, plus all the other months of treatment, my gut was a mess, like a total mess. It was just bombed out, wiped out, disaster. So thank God that would all happen while I was working with Dr. Kasha, and she really helped me through that. And then we worked on the reactivated Epstein-Barr, and then the whole thing of gut restoration. And why I highlighted this is because this, I believe, is the missing piece that almost nobody is talking about. Practitioners that do get it, that do know about SIBO, they're all like, here's your antibiotics, or here's this, go home, take that, follow this diet, and it ends there. But it doesn't end there, because most people that do all that, they still feel like crap, right? They need that microbiome restoration to rebuild all that stuff that's been totally decimated. So that's where we were. That's what we worked on. Finally, feeling better. So this was Christmas 2021. My family and I, we were like, you know what? We need to go get out of here. It was during the pandemic. We were like, I don't care how many hoops we have to jump through to travel. Test me, do whatever you need to do, but I'm getting out of here. So we went down to Maui, had the best vacation. It was such a best decision we could ever made. It is my happy place. Coming back now, it's 2022, so I'm expanding my diet now. I still continuing with my digestive supports, my enzymes, bile, because I don't have a gallbladder. Also hydrochloric acid with meals, and herbal supplements. And at this point, I'm like, I have so much information in my head. It was almost like every day my head hurt. It's like I had, you know, hours and hours and all this stuff I had learned and the studying and everything. So I'm like, I have to get this out of my head. So I created a class, SIBO. It's like literally the nuts and bolts of everything. And I finally got it all out. And thankfully to Malcolm, he let me present that here last February. It was such a success that he's like, let's keep it live, that people can get that class online whenever they want. I'm like, yes, let's do that. So it's still available. And I was also honored last year to be speaker at the Canadian Herb Conference to teach herbalists about SIBO, because like I said, people are not getting the help they need from their doctors. So they're running to different practitioners, right? Herbalists, nutritionists, et cetera, et cetera. So they need to know about it. So by this point now, I'm kind of like, I would say 80% of the way. And I'd been hearing in some SIBO groups about this thing called gut-centered hypnotherapy. And there's an app, it's called Nerva. And it's all founded in research. If you want, you can look it up, but it's created specifically for people with IBS. And it's all based around, you know, the gut-brain connection, which you've probably heard of, and the vagus nerve and all of that. So I'm like, I don't know. This sounds kind of kooky, but you know what? Fine. It's a 30-day free trial. What the heck, right? So I guinea pigged myself through everything else. Why not try this? So I did it. And honest to God, I was shocked that it was the thing that got me from 80 to 100%. And I didn't feel stressed. I mean, you know, we all have some stress, but it wasn't like every day I was like, you know, holding my gut and feeling I'm so stressed. Like, but there's that subconscious element, right, that you don't actually realize. So that was kind of cool, actually. And yeah, now I should get a kickback because I keep talking about them to everybody. So I should become like an influencer on them or whatever. So what have I learned in this wonky 7 years that it's been? And I say 7 years because it's 5 years since diagnosis, but I had had symptoms probably good 2 years before that. So first of all, sad to say, you need to learn everything you can. You do. And the reason is because then you can ask intelligent questions at your appointments. Poor Dr. Tony, I would go in with like a list. I'd be like, okay, what about this? What about this? What about this? What about, you know, and I would just like pepper her, right? And you can make intelligent choices and be a partner in your treatment, not just, okay, doctor, whatever you say, right? Like you want to have that dialogue and be a part of it, because there were some things that came up with my MD that were unrelated to this. And at one point he was suggesting me to go on a proton pump inhibitor, which inhibits your stomach acid. I'm like, hell no, like, no, that's a whole problem right there. Like, so you have to know these things so you can make the right choices. You have to, and that comes into the next piece, advocate, right? If something doesn't feel right, if you don't want to do something, you have to say that. You have to be your own advocate. And it takes more than one doctor. You really do. When you have a chronic situation, whether it's SIBO, whether it's something else, usually one practitioner of some kind isn't going to be enough. It's helpful to connect with others who are in the same boat. So I found a lot of great groups online. I'll share some resources in a minute. and build what I call your dream team. So like you saw, I worked with an MD, an ND, a functional nutritionist. I had a therapist. I had, who am I missing? Oh, my TCM doctor, traditional Chinese medicine for acupuncture. It takes a village, it takes a team. And you have to ask for help when you need it. And it's okay to not be okay. So huge kudos to my team. Couldn't have done it without Dr. Tony, and Dr. Beverly at the clinic, grassroots clinic. My MD at the time, Dr. Danny Zimmerman, took off on me and went up to Northwest Territories. Dr. Krista Marks is who I saw for Chinese medicine and acupuncture. As I said, Dr. Kasha, who wrote this amazing book, Kimberly for therapy, my family, Mila the cat, my friends, some of whom are here today. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And my other dream team, this man is my hero. I got to sit down and get coffee with this man one day, Dr. Mark Pimentel. He leads the MAST program at Cedars-Sinai. He's the leading SIBO researcher right now in IBS. The gut research that him and his team are cranking out is phenomenal, and it's fast and furious. They're going to have more stuff coming out this May. So if you have GI stuff, follow MAST program on Instagram, follow Dr. Pimentel. Dr. Allison Seebecker is also a leading SIBO doc. She's a naturopath and a SIBO patient herself, but her site is a gold mine of info, and she posts all the research there. So it's really handy. Dr. Nirala Jacoby, also a naturopathic doctor with a fabulous podcast. Siobhan Sarda is a SIBO warrior like me, and she's big on education. So she started SIBO SOS, which stands for Save Ourselves, because that's basically what we have to do. So online, she has on Facebook the SIBO SOS community, which is great. That's where I saw all those things that people's doctors had told them. And she also wrote the book Healing SIBO. And then these three ladies have kept me fed and alive, dealing with restricted diets and not wanting to kill somebody over the last several years, with their meal plans and cookbooks and resources and all of that. So in my darkest days, I kept saying something good will come from this. I just believed that. I didn't know what it was going to be, but I think really what that is me getting up and talking and sharing and teaching and advocating, and, you know, basically by sharing my stories so that you guys hopefully don't have to have as long of a gap to get to the bottom of what's going on. Maybe you've heard this and you're suffering with something, or you know somebody that is, and you can share this information with them, which I encourage you to do, just so that you can speed up that timeline so you can finally get the help that you need. And as I said, I did create that online class that is available here. It's called What's Wrong with My Gut? Uncover the hidden truth behind your GI upset and learn the steps to finally feel better. So it covers everything. What is SIBO? What are the symptoms? What are the underlying causes and associated conditions? What are all the treatments? How do you get a test? What if your doctor won't give you one? How to interpret the results? Mindset is in there because that's a big piece. All of that, and what you can do, steps you can take in the meantime so you can finally start to feel better. It's only 27 bucks. It's the best 27 bucks you ever spent if you have gut stuff, and it's available on the Light Seller website. So I hope you'll take a look at that if you have issues. But really, it comes down to this. Like I named my talk, hope, resilience. Just keep going. Just keep going. Keep learning all you can. Keep asking questions. Be curious. You know, talk to people. Tell them what you need. Ask for what you need. So I just want to wrap up with a final thank you. Is Malcolm here? He left. Malcolm, this was your slide. Anyway, and to the whole team here at Light Seller, thank you for giving me this platform. I'm back again after a year of sharing last year, so I really appreciate that. And a big thanks to all you guys for sticking around, hearing me out, and spending some of your afternoon with me. I would love to keep in touch. So if you want to follow me, I am on Instagram. I created my own company called Healing Path Herbals, where I offer herbal consultations. I sell products, tinctures, salves, teas, lots of teas. I kind of went nutty around, once you get tea formulating, it's addictive. So you can check out my tea menu, and I do have some business cards up here at the front. So if you'd like to grab one of those, come and talk to me if you have questions. I do have one ask before I wrap up. And like I said, is now that you guys know some of this stuff around SIBO, share it. Like I said, there's millions of people suffering right now. Their doctors aren't helping, you know, they're just not getting the answers that they need. All it might take is for you to say, have you heard of SIBO? Right? And put them on that path. That's all it might take. So share out what you know, and let's have that domino effect, that ripple effect, so that this becomes more in the common, you know, lingo, and that people can get the help that they need. So that's me. Thank you. Here, Malcolm, I got to go back. There, that was your slide you missed. Yeah, who's that guy?
Okay, we're just go to questions. Got a couple online.
Oh, okay, great.
And there we are. Okay,
Oh.
Mike is working.
Where do I see these questions? Are you asking? me
Yeah,
the
I've got them
questions?
right here.
Okay.
So there's a bunch.
Oh,
Okay, so they weren't able to see the PowerPoint very well
Right.
Online. So which infections? You mentioned something about an infection.
Oh, right. So I can talk on my mic. I was talking about Lyme infections. So I tested positive for Borrelia, which is the bacteria that causes Lyme, but there's also multiple other tick-borne infections. So I had Borrelia, Babesia, Rickettsia, Mycoplasma, and Ehrlichia. So if you Google tick-borne infections, probably a lot of those will come up. So yeah, those are the main ones that I was talking about.
All right. And then what is the tincture?
Okay, so that tincture is thyme, golden seal, and myrrh. And it's god awful, but if you eat something with peanut butter right after you drink it, it kind of takes a taste in your mouth.
All right. Another question. Can't make out the name of the functional nutritionist.
Kasha Kynes. Can we hold this up so they could see? Or,
Yeah, just right over there.
Can you see this? Is it showing up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go a little
Kasha,
bit closer.
K-I-N-E-S. drkashakynes.com, I think is her website. I can't remember, but you'll find her online. Yeah.
All right. We got a question in the audience.
Okay. Hi.
Hello, very quick. Regards to the home infections we have, do you recall you got this?
No. No. So the question was, do I recall getting a tick bite? So I don't. And that's the thing. So a lot of people don't, because bullseye rash only appears in a small percentage of people, right? So you can have it a tick bite, but what I did have in 2015, I suddenly developed bizarre tingling in my hands that later went to my feet a couple of days later. Then this finger and this thumb would feel very cold and almost numb-like. Then I felt like I had a tight band around my calf muscle on my left leg. So I was having all these weird things. So I went for nerve conduction testing, which was normal. I went to see an internist. I had like probably 50 vials of blood. Like they tested so many things, like a lot of these autoimmune conditions, all of that came back fine. So I think that was actually, and that was when I did have Lyme testing done. That was just the standard testing here, which is lousy, and it came back negative. So, yeah, so I think it was probably around that, that was probably the acute phase of, you know, having had some kind of a tick bite. Yeah.
One more part of that.
Yeah.
Were you out in nature or somewhere where you would have felt that?
I mean, through that summer, we were up in Radium, we were hiking, you know, so it's very possible. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, a couple more questions online. Ramona, will the online course act as a treatment for those of us that can't afford herbalist visit fees? Meaning, can we treat our own SIBO by taking your online course?
I do detail quite a bit in there. I do recommend kind of doing it in consult with a practitioner, but there's quite a bit of information there that if people are, you know, savvy, you could potentially start a few things. But again, that's, you know, I preface that presentation as well with it is not medical advice, that you should see a practitioner.
Cool. Okay, can you share the names of the practitioners, plural? I think you had a slide with practitioner names on there.
Yes, so Dr. Tony Reed here in the audience, REID at Grassroots Naturopathic. Yeah, this doctor here was the Dr. Kasha Kynes.
Okay, excellent.
And Dr. Krista Marks here as well for Chinese medicine.
All right, excellent. Then we've got maybe just a comment here. I feel like I just got the greatest gift in the form of information and some hope.
You made my day, whoever that is. I'm going to take a picture of that. I need that.
Yeah,
Thank
for
you.
sure. Okay, were there any other questions in the room? for Ramona. Otherwise, okay, wonderful. So we're going to take a pause. We got about 19 minutes until the top of the hour, where we'll have our next presentation every hour, something different. Thank you all for being here. If anybody wants to connect more with Ramona, she's here. We'll just kind of stretch and we'll be back at 2 o'clock.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks.